right, we are officially live. Welcome to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We are proudly presented by the Belly Up Sports Media Network. My name is Ryan McCarthy. I'm one of the hosts, and to my right is a man who turned down a 4-year, $60 million contract with the Los Angeles Lakers yesterday. No, not Dan Hurley, Dustin Henry. Dustin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing all right, same initials, and I was,
I know, a coincidence, right?
it's funny because I was about to tell you that we had some breaking news that I too had been contacted about the LA Lakers head coaching job, and I too turned down a lucrative offer because, as I understand it, LeBron James and Bronny James are a package deal, and I didn't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want LeBron James or his kid as my GM. So that's an interesting story. Maybe we'll dive into it another time. But tonight we've got more pressing matter. We got more pressing matters to attend to. We've got the next movie in our movie review series. We've got Joey Chestnut being banned and then being unbanned from competition in the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, and Dustin's got some sadness to reveal.
Yes,
for the first two games of the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Final.
This is shades of 2006 for me, and I don't like it.
Well, it's best of 7 series, my friend.
Yes.
But before we do that, just want to remind you about our social media channels, which are right down here below: Twitter, Instagram, and the scarcely used TikTok. It's at NoCredsREQ. Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ. YouTube.com/@NoCredsREQ. If you're watching on Rumble tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, we want to welcome you. Thank you for all the new followers we have there. But I also want to remind you to please, where is that element? There it is. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to all of our social media channels right down here below. We really do appreciate it. Also on the podcast side, subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcast platform you belong to, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Good Pods, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you podcast. Rate and review. A 5-star rating would be very awesome. Also, if you're on a platform where you can review, we might even read it on the air. And I see a wry smile on Dustin's face as I say all these things. I don't know what he's smiling about, but go ahead.
It was nothing you did. It was because I had to mute my mic for reasons, and those of you who have been tuning into the show for a while might remember a time where I thought I had muted my mic and I did not. So I was just reflecting fondly on that time.
Burp. And because we are a live show every Tuesday at 8:05 Eastern and the occasional Saturday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern, sometimes time is subject to change, but that's okay. We want you to engage with us in the comment section. We've got a comment already coming in, and I've been feeling kind of under the weather last couple of days. I thought this was allergies, but it turns out to be a little bit of a head cold. So this sound always makes me feel better when I'm under the weather. So I'm sure you would want to hear it too.
Oh yeah, always.
All right. And we have Mr. Kevin Wilson, Belly Up Fantasy Sports, saying, "Happy Tuesday, gentlemen. Happy Tuesday to you, sir. I'm curious to know your thoughts about the Utah hockey team. Which name you think they'll be? I want to say starting next season, because I don't know if they're supposed to reveal it later this summer, or if they're going to just be called the Utah hockey team for a season and then go to become whatever permanent name they have going forward." So
I hope they don't do the Washington football team route. That that was, I don't know. You need a name. Your team needs a name.
You know what's funny is that I remember listening to Levac and guys, friends of the show, Jeff Levac and Tom Gazlowski. Good shout out to those guys. I remember a couple of years ago they had some when they were back with ESPN Radio.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody from some newspaper in Cleveland, I want to say it's one of the main newspapers, said that the Cleveland Indians should be called the Cleveland baseball team.
No.
No. No,
I disagree.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I think they should have kept the Indians. I think they fell. Personally, I think they fell to the trend of the day, which was we need social change. We need social change, and they fell for it. And now they're stuck with a lame name, like the Washington Commanders are.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tough thing, and that's a whole bigger issue than we won't get in that we won't get into this show. But maybe another show, maybe another time. But I have to submit that I will admit that if the Washington football team and if this Utah hockey team decides to be called the Utah hockey team for the season, it is better than the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. Yes, that's right. Look that up. The Mets minor league affiliate allowed the fans to vote, and the Rumble Ponies won out. Please don't. And then there was that thing from a few years ago where they submitted a team name to an online vote, and people. Bodie McBoatface won in a landslide.
Yes, name this boat. The HMS Bodie McBoatface won by a landslide.
Yeah.
They didn't stick with it because people are because people in charge. Well, here's the thing too. Like I remember I was watching a documentary on the origins of the Nippon, the NPB, the Nippon, the Japanese professional baseball.
Yeah.
And they would what was then the Hankyu Braves, which would later become the Oryx Blue Wave, which would later become the Oryx Buffaloes. They went to a vote when the Oryx Software Corporation bought the Hankyu Braves in the 1980s. They said, we're going to put it to a vote. We're going to put these names here. And fans overwhelmingly said, we want the team still be called the Braves. And they said, well, the corporation said, well, screw that. We're going to be the Blue Wave. And they're like, what the hell is the Blue Wave? and just the only reason why we know about the Oryx Blue Wave, Ichiro Suzuki.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I know that name. I was trying to rack my brain as to why. Ichiro, I'm convinced that he could still suit up today and play for somebody.
Sling it.
He's ridiculous.
Yeah.
A phenom.
Absolutely. Oh, and Mr. Wilson says just about anything except the Mammoth.
Yeah.
Well, there is already a professional sports team called the Mammoth. It's the Colorado Mammoth of the National Lacrosse League. So, which the Albany Firewolves beat this past season.
Summarily dispensed.
Just saying. All right, we're going to get into it. Let's start off this episode with our summer movie review series, No Ticket Required. All right. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about the movie from 2013, the movie Rush, starring Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl, also making appearances, Olivia Wilde, and some other actors I've never heard of. But let's talk about this movie. This is based on most of the movies we've chosen this summer. Most of the movies we've chosen this summer are based on true stories. This is based off of the 1976 Formula One rivalry, the tete-a-tete, the rivalry between Ferrari driver Niki Lauda and McLaren driver James Hunt. And it takes you behind the scenes of how they became rivals and how they became friends off the race course. And the interesting dichotomies between the both of them. James Hunt being very, very vivacious, very boisterous, bombastic, some might say. Don't know a lot of words out here.
Bit of a playboy.
of a playboy. Yeah, you see that. You see that at the beginning. It's well established 5 minutes into the, not even 5 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. Which, let me just say, cameo, one of those actresses that you may have never heard of. I am very well acquainted with Natalie Dormer.
Yeah.
Of Game of Thrones fame, and also
Yes.
before that, I watched The Tudors. She was in that. She plays Anne Boleyn. Not the best role for her because we know what happens to Anne Boleyn, unfortunately. But if Natalie Dormer's in it, I'm giving it a shot. Something about that nose and that smile does it for me. I'm gonna tune in.
So you basically wouldn't. You wouldn't kick her out of bed for eating crackers.
Yes, as my Uncle Al would say, I would not. I would not do so.
Well, there was a lot of betting in this movie, that's for sure, especially in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're not gonna try to spoil it too much. But I mean, if you look at the history, just Google 1976 Formula One series, and it took you. It gave you that excitement. It gave you that excitement of that race, that standings race between Lauda, Lauda and Hunt. And it's funny. The most memorable lines in the first 5 minutes was, "What was your name? James Hunt. Rhymes with
oh
with
yeah,
as much you are."
yeah.
And they would call each other a-hole throughout the entire movie, like,
Oh yeah,
a-hole.
yeah. I mean, one of them, and the opening for me, which established, the dynamic, and to me, the difference between these two gentlemen, at least Ron Howard's vision of the contrast between these two gentlemen was established very well. But the Niki Lauda, played excellently by Daniel Bruhl in this film. He said, "I'm remembered for what happened to me on this day when I was chasing him like an a-hole." So that's like right in the intro, and it would become a theme, as you pointed out.
Yeah, it's a theme throughout the movie, but also you kind of got to see the mutual respect that they would start to earn for each other. Like let's start the beginning of the movie, but the first couple of races, you've got Hunt being conspiratorial, accusing Lauda and Ferrari of fixing his car, making it not run. Lauda having a bunch of wins, and Hunt either missing out, finishing second, or not finishing because his car would break down. It just seemed like there wasn't a villain in this movie. Like, there was no established villain. I mean, you could say, if you're the more, I would say, British type, or somebody who likes the guy who's a showman,
you
would appreciate Hunt more. But if you're somebody who is like, okay, slow and steady wins the race, it's one thing I thought of was the classic Aesop tale of the tortoise and the hare. Lauda was the tortoise.
Yeah.
Very calculated, very slow, but he had his
talented tortoise.
a very talented tortoise. Yes. And then you had James Hunt as the hare. The hare being flamboyant, wants to go fast, wants to finish first, and gets kind of distracted by outside things like his lifestyle, his marriage falling apart. But I've spoken a little bit too much on this, Dustin. Let me get your thoughts about the movie. I did some research about the background. Actually, I'll bring up some of the facts from IMDb. So,
all right,
go ahead and give me your impressions of this movie. What you like? What didn't you like?
All right. Well, I'll sit down. I'll start it off, and I'll try to be a little less. I mean, I waxed rhapsodic on Goon for a while, and I felt like I didn't give you enough chance to speak here. So I'll say that, first off, the things that I liked about this movie, and let me couch this by saying I am usually a sucker for Ron Howard movies. Not all of them are hits, but I think he does a good job of telling a story. He knows how to make a movie. He's a person that is good at his craft, in my opinion. So let me just say, I like his style of directing. And to me, he does a good job of establishing the contrast between Lauda and Hunt immediately. You can immediately tell that they're different. They're different guys. They have different approaches. They have different things. And to your point, Ryan, there isn't really a cut villain in this movie, but there are points where it's hard to root for both of them. Sometimes Hunt in the beginning, you're like, oh, he doesn't take this seriously. He's not, he just doesn't care. And then Lauda, at times, you're like, he's rough around the edges, and it seems like he is almost too driven to where he doesn't care about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I did find myself kind of turning against Lauda a little bit when I saw that it was well established that he reported Hunt's car, for being, what was it, an 1/8 inch too wide or something like that. So then McLaren had to try to modify the car, and it just caused a string. And I found myself thinking, Niki, if you're as good as you say you are, which I think you are, you should just be able to beat him straight up, without resorting to these types of things. But then James Hunt, there were times where you couldn't root for him either openly. But I found myself by the end of the movie rooting for both of them. And there's a lot of people that would say, I've heard in various circles, some of my friends also say this, that they're tired of the ultra realistic, like everybody's flawed approach to movies. I haven't gotten sick of that, because that's the way people are. I didn't want it. To me, the movie would not ring true if you tried to make Niki Lauda 100% the hero, or tried to make James Hunt 100% the hero. It's not going to work. The highlights of this movie for me are the race sequences. I thought they were incredibly well filmed, action-packed. Special shout out to my pal Derek, who was nice enough to provide me with a sound bar system and a subwoofer. It was really nice to watch some of the race scenes with that. It was booming in the house. Mm-hmm. My sister, on the record, would like it stated that she loved some of the fur coats in this movie, and she hoped that the actresses kept them after the movie.
I was going to say, I thought she was going to comment on Chris Hemsworth's butt, or
she just said
double.
Yeah, she just said, ooh, there's some butts. But I did check in with her. She said Chris Hemsworth doesn't really do it for her.
Really?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Those are her words, not mine. Because I wouldn't kick Thor out of bed for eating crackers either. I mean, he would probably throw me out. So that's neither here nor there. But
not that there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with that. Classic Seinfeld moment.
Classic Seinfeld.
But I don't really have many critiques of this movie, because my support, like you said, and I keep hammering on this, but you said there's no definitive hero in this movie. Yeah. And my support for the two kept kind of vacillating back and forth. I mean, Hunt, when you break it down, just as a person and as far as respect, James Hunt was probably slightly more unlikable for me. I think my sister had more of a visceral reaction. There's a memorable scene where Hunt kind of, on the sly, a reporter takes a low shot at Niki Lauda without spoiling anything.
Yep.
He takes a very low shot at Niki Lauda, and Hunt takes care of that situation. And my sister turned to me and said, "It's the only time in the movie that I've liked this guy." That's what she said. And I disagreed with that slightly. I don't think he was that. What I did respect about Hunt was his willingness to go for it, his brashness. And he, in his own way, although not as outwardly as Niki Lauda, had his own drive and passion for racing. He loved to race. You could see that. Both of these men were talented, whereas Hunt was maybe a little bit more of a natural. He was just as good. He was for that season. He was just as good as Niki Lauda. But Niki Lauda, it's hard not to root for Niki Lauda with what happens to him in this movie and what he overcomes when he overcomes some of the things that he has to overcome in this movie. I turned to my sister and I said, I don't think I've ever been this driven in life about anything, and you
no pun intended.
Yeah, you just have to respect it. But if you know anything about racing, which I don't know all that much, but Sick was educating us in the chat on the Saturday show when we said we were going to be reviewing this movie. And my friend Derek, who follows F1 very closely, he was the one that educated me about F3 and F2. I did not know that those minor league divisions, so to speak, existed. But if you know anything about racing, you know what happens to Niki Lauda in 1976. And I knew what was happening, but when that particular race came up, I was still on the edge of my seat. And that to me is the sign of a good movie. And I will leave it there for now so that you can interject with your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I got a few thoughts. I mean, at first I was a little confused about Daniel Bruhl's accent in the movie.
Yes, okay. I'm glad you said something.
Because it vacillated, because he's trying to sound Austrian,
yes,
but he sounds Spanish.
Yeah, I don't know if Spanish was the read I got, but great minds think alike, because I said to my sister, I said, my only major critique of this movie so far is his accent is different at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
and
then it's not Will Smith. It's not Will Smith as Richard Williams, but
yes,
it's a little confusing. I'm a little confused because at the beginning of the movie, it's very very German / Austrian.
Yes.
Now I watched a little 8-minute interview with Niki Lauda, who said that this movie's around 80% accurate.
Okay,
about 80% accurate, because we first watched the movie without the soundtrack. He says, "Wow, they made me look boring." But the Austrian, the Germanic peoples aren't exactly known for being the most thrilling personalities.
Well, yeah, and I think it was.
Go ahead.
Just quickly, I think too it was a device to show the contrast between the two men, just hammer it home more. So I was wondering how much of that was Hollywoodified, for lack of a better term.
Right. But then he said he watched the movie again with everything's edited, everything has the score of the score of the movie. By the way, the music kept me in it from beginning to end, and by the great Hans Zimmer, of course.
Oh yeah,
one of the two or three great movie composers of our era. Hans Zimmer, I would say Harry Gregson Williams.
Yeah. John Williams, of course.
John Williams, not Dan Silvestri, Alan Silvestri. Who did Back to the Future, the Marvel movies. He did all those movies.
Danny Elfman, we got to throw him on the list.
We got to throw his name in there. Yeah. So the Hans Zimmer, once again, and don't forget, Hans Zimmer did the Simpsons soundtrack, the Simpsons movie soundtrack too.
Oh yeah.
Yep. But the music and the sequences that went along with it matched. Everything matched, which was really cool. So the accent was kind of throwing me off a little bit. But I did a little reading, a little digging.
All right.
Daniel Bruhl is half Spanish.
Okay.
His dad's German, his mom is Spanish.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
You picked that up. You got that ear, that linguistic ear, my friend.
I love language. What can I say? One thing I noticed is that James Hunt, how Popeye, his superpower, he gets the superpower, his strength when he eats spinach. Apparently, James Hunt's superpower is when he bangs hoolas.
He's relaxed.
Yeah. And he noticed, like, after his wife, he said when his wife breaks up with him, and he's flying back to whatever he's flying over to whichever race he's going to next. He has an encounter with a stewardess, and he joins the Mile High Club, and he wins the next race.
Yeah.
Which is the weird thing. Now I've got a bunch of facts here from IMDb, courtesy of IMDb. First one says, when Niki Lauda first saw Rush, he said, "Shit, that's really me."
They did do an excellent job casting these guys or making them look like either props goes out to the makeup and costume department or casting, because they did the two actors did remind you of what the real men look like.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. In an interview with the Austrian Times on the occasion of his 60th birthday, Niki Lauda stated that a journalist asking him how his injured face affected his marriage was the biggest insult he had to suffer in his life.
Yeah.
And it's portrayed in that one scene. And what you notice is what's the funny thing is during the movie, Niki Lauda is portrayed as very engineering focused. He's very
Mm-hmm.
focused. He's very kind of matter of fact, very direct. Not doesn't really humor a lot. Doesn't suffer fools very easily.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And at the press conference where he comes back at 42 days after his accident, he comes back. He's very jovial. He's very says, well, they had to graft a piece of skin from my right thigh to my forehead,
Mm-hmm.
which means I won't sweat, which is a great advantage for me.
Yeah.
And you see that question being asked of him, and I don't know if it happened during that Grand Prix, but yeah, I would. That's a very hurtful thing to have asked you too.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's terrible. I can't even believe it. And you just with what he overcomes, you just can't even imagine it. And there are, and like I said, my allegiance kind of vacillated back and forth between the two. But I think Ron Howard's ultimate goal in this movie may have been to make you root for both of them, but to paint the contrast between the two men. And as you say, you can see the mutual respect develop between the two. But there are there's two standout scenes for me in the beginning of the movie with Niki Lauda before it even gets going, because in the beginning, I'm just kind of like, man, well, I respect this guy's drive, and I respect, that he's like, I'm gonna make something of myself on my own. I don't need your money. He says that to his father, and then, but when the girl picks him up from that party, when he says, "Are you leaving?" and the lady who would ultimately become his wife says to him, "Yes, I'm leaving." He's driving the car, and he's like telling her all these problems with the car based on, and she's like, "How do you know?" And he's like, I've got a great ass that could tell me exactly if a car's drifting this way or that. He's saying all this stuff, and I cracked a smile at that. And then when the car does break down, because Niki Lauda was right, there were things wrong with it, and these two guys pick them up, and they're all jazzed that Niki Lauda is there. They know who he is because he's signed with Ferrari, and she tells him, you don't. Should I know who you are? Because you don't drive like an F1 driver. You
Right.
drive like a grandma. And then she cajoles him a little bit, and he says, "Do you always get what you want?" And she said, "Usually." And then he really takes off and opens that car up, and that's one of the
Yeah,
better scenes.
driving a POS Lancia.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the better scenes in the movie to me. It's what started to ingratiate me to Niki Lauda's character in this movie, rather than just respecting him for wanting to carve his own way and being driven.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's about 90 something more facts in here, but I'll try to read some of the more notable ones. Yeah, Daniel Bruhl wore a dental appliance to mimic Niki Lauda's overbite. Yeah, Niki Lauda was a big fan of the film and rued the fact that James Hunt was no longer around to see it, as he would have really enjoyed it. Let's see. He says the real Niki Lauda claims the film was entirely accurate. However, the film took creative liberties of the James Hunt and Lauda rivalry, which is why I mentioned that clip I watched on YouTube about Lauda saying, "Yeah, it's about 80% accurate."
Yeah,
It kind of made me look boring at first. But yeah, they kind of overplayed James Hunt. Of course, they kind of had to, I think,
yeah,
because what's interesting is that he said in the same interview, it says Daniel Bruhl had to live with the guy. He actually lived in Vienna for a month to get the Austrian accent right,
mm.
and they actually became very good friends off
Oh
the set.
wow,
Off the set, Lotto actually wound up flying him to Brazil. He wound up flying Daniel Bruhl and his girlfriend to Brazil to watch the Brazilian Grand Prix to be his guest.
Oh, wow.
They become really good friends. And unfortunately, Niki Lauda passed away in 2019 after renal failure. But yeah, they became close, and actually Bruhl actually wound up living in Austria to kind of get that accent perfected, which kind of worked. But
in the beginning, he had it, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that it kind of takes you through the time period, because in Formula One, there were a lot of fatalities, a lot of crashes, a lot of injuries, because guys were going so fast, and the cars weren't as safety forward as they are today. In fact, the last Formula One driver to suffer a fatality was 30 years ago. That was the great Ayrton Senna from Brazil.
Yeah, that was 1994, right?
1994. I remember when that happened too, because people were like, wow, Ayrton Senna passed away. And if you want to watch a really good documentary, watch the one on Ayrton Senna, which takes him through the entirety of his life, from when he started racing go-karts at age, I think, 8, all the way up until his Formula One career. Through his Formula One career, his great rivalry with Alain Prost, the French Formula One race car driver who was his teammate for a short time, and then I think Prost went to McLaren because Senna and Prost were on Ferrari, and then Prost, because the rivalry was so heated, moved over to McLaren. I want to say. I'll double check on that, but it's just an amazing. It's a great documentary. I watched it numerous times, and it just takes you through the entire life. He dated a very well-known children's TV show host at the time, who had her show broadcast in the United States. But it was just actually, and that was the one thing that I also took you through too, is the number of crashes that Formula One car drivers had to do. And in fact, the day before Lauda suffered his car crash at Nuremberg, a driver, I remember his last name as being Ratzenberger, he passed away from a test run crash.
Yeah.
And in actuality, on IMDb, it does state that the race depicted in the film was the last Formula One event staged on Germany's notorious Nuremberg Nordschleife, which is the North Loop, since the lap was deemed too hazardous.
Yeah.
So the Nuremberg ring was notoriously dangerous, and I don't think they race on there anymore. Let me look that up to see when the German Grand Prix is usually.
They did hammer that home in the movie too, because there's that moment, without trying to spoil it too much. There is some weather at the Nuremberg Ring, and Niki Lauda raises a vote as to whether they should postpone the race or cancel the race. And
they don't hold the German Grand Prix anymore. The last race was in 2019, and it was held usually in three places in its history. They stopped at the Nuremberg Ring. They also raced at Hockenheimring in Baden-Württemberg. And the last one was held in the AVUS in Berlin. So the German Grand Prix no longer exists as a race as of 5 years ago. But general impressions, if you want to spoil it for yourself, look at the history, look at the 1976 Formula One season. You want to see what happened during that season and who wound up winning. But I like this movie. It flowed. It didn't, unlike King Richard, which was soul cleaving and took forever.
You're gonna take shots at King Richard any chance you get, and I respect it. It's a can of corn.
It's a can of corn. By the way, go see Bad Boys Ride or Die. It slaps. But no, I like this movie because it was over. I was kind of like, oh, it's over. But yeah, I like this movie. I enjoy this movie a lot. It's a Ron Howard, his first name Glazer, Ron Howard Glazer film. They always do a great job when they make movies together. If you can take the language, you take some spots where there's some nudity, it's if you can get through that, if you're kind of a prude or just you're like, oh no, it's nudity. It's very brief. It's not
Yeah.
very.
It's not done
very
in
long.
a gratuitous way.
Exactly. It's not pornographic. It's I mean, if you want to call it artistic, go ahead. But.
Yeah, but I'm glad you like this movie. I mean, I did too, and I had never seen it either. I think it was a maiden voyage for both of us on this one. And I'm gonna have to put it at number 1 so far. It bumps Goon down to number 2 for me.
Yeah, same here.
And I might, a little on-air production meeting, Ryan. But what if we tried to find, because Ford versus Ferrari last year, we both loved it.
Yes.
Rush this year, we both liked it. We'll have to see how it holds up as we move through our movies for this slate. But what if we tried to find a racing movie each year to put on, no ticket required? We could.
I like that.
Yeah, we could try to do it. One racing movie.
Yep. One movie that I haven't seen. One racing movie I haven't seen is Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise. I haven't watched.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've seen that either. So that is a contender.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other racing movies I haven't seen yet. I don't think Cannonball Run counts as a racing movie, does it? Well, we'll look it up. I mean, if it's, it could be just movie. It could be just. I mean, I don't know if documentaries count, but
yeah.
But we'll think of something.
Come on, if we're doing no ticket required, like 10 years down the line, we're gonna have to get pretty creative, because
we are. So many. Come on, Hollywood, let's go. Let's go with the racy race. I mean, you could argue Talladega Nights, but I've seen Talladega Nights.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
So yeah, if you got any racing movies that you want to recommend to us, like I said, I haven't seen Days of Thunder yet, so that might be one for next year.
Yeah,
next year's installment. But if you got one and you're watching on replay or watching live, I mean, if you recommend a racing movie to us, let us know. We'll put it in the old back of our brains.
Yeah.
For next year. But next week's review is going to the movie Boys in the Boat. I actually have the trailer lined up, so if we want to watch the trailer, I'll put both of us on mute and we'll watch the trailer together. And then we'll watch the movie and we'll break it down next week. So I'll go ahead and play that trailer right now. Boom. Courtesy of MGM.
There are some moments in life you'll never forget. The depression hit everyone hard. No jobs, no food. We were broke.
Looks like you still owe a balance on this semester.
So what's that about, making some money?
Yeah, the royalty. You're on, you get a part-time job included, cheap place to live.
8-man crew is the most difficult team sport in the world. The average human body is just not meant for such things. Most of you will not be chosen. Beautiful speech, Coach.
They're announcing the team today. Are you going to make it?
We rode out of need.
Come on, boys.
The need to stay in school. The need to eat, to sleep.
We gotta keep these, right? As long as we stay on the team.
Washington Huskies coach is bringing an inexperienced boat to competition.
They said we couldn't compete with the richest schools in the nation.
The Washington boat has taken the lead. Washington has done it.
I got 9 seconds under the course record. Olympic year this year. Olympic year? I didn't realize.
That bunch of kids rode like no one else that's ever come through here.
Everybody else tires and it just gets stronger. We have a boat that I believe could qualify for an Olympic spot.
Hope you know what you're doing.
They said we couldn't beat the Germans.
We gotta beat those other schools first, but Coach says we had a shot.
Maybe we can row as a team.
If you guys don't get yourselves figured out, you're not racing at all.
The boys, that boat, sorry,
but they didn't understand who we were.
Let's show them what's in this book.
I don't believe what I'm seeing.
past others. They're connected. Sweat and pain.
For what it's worth, I'm proud of you boys.
Inspiring.
You missed the part where I told him not to tip over.
And I won.
Roll for your country. Roll for each other.
For all the people who never believed in you. As one. As one.
That one was a recommendation from your sister because we were going through movies and she was just looking at movies, her sports movies, and she saw that one and said, "Why don't you do that one?" I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to call somebody in from the bullpen to help select movies for no ticket required.
Yep. And we got your sister to do that.
Yeah.
Before we go to our commercial break, Brother Josiah joining us saying hi there. How you doing, Brother Josiah? Appreciate you joining us. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, talk some Joey. We're going to talk some competitive eating. Another sport I never thought we would ever talk about on this.
We're trailblazing.
We are just going through the gamut of of sports. So stick around for more No Credentials Required. Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, we can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets. That's right, folks. Plenty of sports going on this summer. Well, really just one, baseball. But if you're in an area, if you're in Dallas, if you're in Florida, if you're in Edmonton, if you're in Boston, your teams are representing your city. So there may be still some tickets available for the Stanley Cup Final and the NBA Finals. But also you got coming up this fall, football. Football's going to be back very soon. You don't want to miss out on any of the action. But in addition to sports, you've got comedy shows, you got plays, you've got musicals, you've got different sporting events if it requires a box office ticket, you can probably find it on SeatGeek.com. And it's got a very dynamic pricing system where the green dots on the seating charts indicate the best prices for your hard-earned money. I know entertainment is very expensive these days. It's very hard to come to a very cheap event, but we'll give you the opportunity to save you some cash. So if you go to SeatGeek.com, put the desired tickets in your inbox. If you're in your cart, at the checkout, you get promo code. You enter promo code BellyUpSports, and for any order over $50, whether it be an individual ticket or a pair of tickets or a group of tickets, get $20 off your order. You want to save some money, especially in this day and age, with inflation being what it is and ticket prices being high. Let's save some money. Belly Up Sports at checkout at SeatGeek.com. $20 off any ticket order of $50 or more. All right. We're going to talk about some competitive eating. And when this story came across my social media feed this afternoon, I said, no, it can't be happening. This can't be true.
Yeah.
Joey Chestnut banned, supposedly, from this year's Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. So I figured, all right, it's competitive juicing in the literal sense, not just a figurative sense with steroids. You know, was he booked for illegal high fiber diet? You know, what happened here?
Yeah.
So the story on ESPN goes as this. This was reported by David Purdom from ESPN. And it basically said that a spokesperson for Major League Eating told ESPN Chestnut had chosen to represent another hot dog brand and therefore would not be allowed to participate in the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest held annually on July 4th at New York City's Coney Island. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And you know what? And here's the thing. Here's the kicker. The other hot dog brand,
Ugh.
it's Impossible Foods.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
That was the most surprising part for me. And, you know, I guess, and you're going to get into it, but I guess there's more to the possible story. But when you first sent me this, I was not surprised. I was surprised because, like you, I thought, okay, what kind of performance enhancing can you do? Like, what, you know, what happened here? And then when I read the article, I had the same reaction as you. I was surprised. But then when I reflected back, if you watch the 30 for 30 on Joey Chestnut and Kobayashi and the birth of the prominence of the hot dog eating contest, it is one of my favorite 4th of July activities. And we've talked about that 30 for 30 on previous episodes. I think we both enjoyed it, but I remember specifically in that movie the head of Major League Eating himself said that Kobayashi had asked to compete in non-sanctioned, or not non-sanctioned, but like other hot dog eating contests, and that
underground hot dog eating.
And that is one of the reasons
hot dog roulette.
They would not let. I mean, there's more sides to the coin, because then there's Kobayashi's side of the story, because then he ended up showing up, and in Major League Eating's mind, he was trying to storm the stage. And then in his mind, he was like, I just thought that I would show up and people would cheer me on, and I was hoping that there'd be like a groundswell. I don't know. It's been a little bit since I watched it, but this is not the first time that somebody has been disallowed to compete over a similar type issue. So I was going to say that there's been a little bit loosely, based on what happened with Kobayashi, there's been a precedent set for this type of thing, because according to the head of Major League Eating, if I remember, they signed effectively like a contract saying that they won't participate in non-Major League Eating sanctioned events or something to that nature. I can't remember the specifics. This is all off the top of my dome, but I was like, oh, there's a precedent for this, so I guess it's not as outlandish. But now you're about to crack an egg of knowledge on me and say, there's more to this story.
I wanted to send this to my nephew because he loves watching the hot dog eating contest every year. He's 20. He's 22 years old and he still loves it. But I imagine this would have been his reaction. So let me go ahead and read the statement from Major League Eating from the New York Post. This is what it says. It says, quote, "We are devastated to learn that Joey Chestnut has chosen to represent a rival brand that sells plant-based hot dogs." That's me. That's my commentary. Rather than competing in the 2024 Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest. For nearly 2 decades, we have worked under the same basic hot dog exclusivity provisions. However, it seems that Joey and his managers have prioritized a new partnership with a different brand over our longtime relationship. Joey Chestnut is an American hero. We would love nothing more to have him at the Nathan's famous international hot dog eating contest. We hope he returns when he is not representing a rival brand. Close quote. And somebody said, I think it was the same statement, and they said that it was basically it's like Michael Jordan saying to Nike, "I'm going to represent Adidas as well." So Joey Chestnut representing a plant-based hot dog company. Gross. Ugh. It just seems weird.
Yeah.
It just seems weird. But go ahead.
It does, because he's kind of synonymous with the Nathan's hot dog. I mean, there's other. Now, if he was representing Sabret, the official hot dog of Yankee Stadium, or some other, or Hembolds or something, I could get behind it. But the Impossible representation just seems kind of out of left field.
It does. But a little bit later, Richard Shea, the Major League Eating executive, he's a brother to the
George Shea, I think.
George Shea, yes,
Yeah.
to George Shea, who was the head of Major League Eating, went on to say, this is from a tweet from Greg Rosenstein, and he says, quote, Joey Chestnut is not banned from the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. Richard Shea tells eating contest, which is Major League Eating, tells NBC News. He says, quote, there is no ban. Major League Eating wants him there. The fans want him there. Nathan's wants him there. Close quote. So this ain't over.
Yeah.
And this is from our friend from the show Cole Johnson, who sent us an article from the USA Today. This is where I'm citing. It said, and this is from the article. It says, also brought to light in the New York Post report, the fact that Chestnut made $200,000 per Nathan's appearance before even getting to his official winnings, $10,000 for each belt. Major League Eating reportedly offered to bump that 4-year, $1.2 million contract offer, but was rebuffed by Chestnut's partnership with Impossible. So the New York Post, I'll just look at that article real quick.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that this Impossible Foods is giving him a 4-year deal. Nathan's had offered Chestnut a 4-year deal worth $1.2 million. He was already being paid $200,000 for last year's contest, so he would have gotten a little bit of a bump in pay from Nathan's. But apparently, Impossible Foods offered him more.
Oh, well, that's the thing, and you can't. I mean, I guess you can't fault Joey for chasing a little extra cheddar. I mean, I think we'd all do that.
No, and I think Joey Chestnut's trying to kind of move away from the competitive eating thing, it seems like, which is why he's got this contract with Impossible Foods. And you were mentioning Kobayashi in the 30 for 30. It mentions in the same article from USA Today, he refused to sign an exclusive contract that has kept him out of the competition since 2010. So that kind of opened the door for Joey Chestnut and other competitive eaters to break his strings of victory. So, or that opened the door to Chestnut winning the last 8.
Yeah,
actually 7. Because I don't think they held one in 2020.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But this opens the door for other competitors to come in. Now, whether or not we see the end of Joey Chestnut at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest is whether what's going to be seen. It's yet to be determined. But this would be a huge loss for Major League Eating.
Oh yeah,
but could we see no? I kind of wonder if part of it. I mean, it's obviously it's Nathan's hot dogs. They're the lead sponsor. They're the ones who are supplying the hot dogs. They're the ones who are supplying, who are just basically sponsoring this event. For them to bring in a competitor, I'd say competitor. I'm putting that in air quotes because it's not really meat. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. It's not meat. Would it be an unfair advantage if Joey Chestnut were to eat Impossible hot dogs during the hot dog eating contest instead of Nathan's hot dogs? Would he break the record if he ate the most pseudo glizzies? Would he break his own mark of 80? I think the record is. I think the record is 80.
I can't remember. He won last year's eating 62 dogs, but I think he's gotten up into 74. I want to say was the high 74 or something like that.
76.
Okay, 76. I was close. I've watched the contest pretty religiously since about 2007. The only year that I tapped out was when they had the Chew View camera. I couldn't deal with the Chew
Gross.
View. I couldn't deal with the chew view. I had to get rid of that one. But you heard it here first. The fans want Joey there. I want Joey there. If Joey is not there, however, my pick to win it this year would be Matt Stoney. All right.
Mhm.
I do know a little bit about competitive eating.
I wish I knew. We would have covered it more.
No, it's okay.
So, are we gonna have a no limit required competitive eating contest?
I don't know. That could be bad for both of us.
I will say this though. I do have I want to say claim to fame, but I do have a distinguished mark at my time at 104.5 The Team ESPN Radio as an intern in 2019. I hold the radio station record for most hot dogs in one sitting.
Oh wow! All right, that's
so
pretty cool.
So back in the day, I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
So back in the day, I was an intern. I got to do a remote event with Levac and Gaz. They're friends of the show, Levac and Gaz.
Yeah.
And they had what's called a grab our balls for prizes. And what you would do, they did is at the Hideaway in Stillwater, which is the official production meeting spot for No Credentials Required.
Yes.
Hideaway, if you want to sponsor us, let us know. But they had not only what they were big, just basically had a large bag of golf balls, and if you drew a ball with a number, you would get the prize that's associated with the number on your ball. So I had this large sack of golf balls. They would basically grab my balls for prizes. There are some very good looking ladies who grab my balls for prizes, and the Viking guys got very jealous of that. I was like, that sucks for you. Where's it going with this? But so they also had a hot dog eating contest where if you won the hot dog eating contest, they put 10 dogs in front of you. You're the first one to eat them all. You would get this rack of 96 Pabst Blue Ribbon Light beer. It was about 5 feet long. This whole thing of beers was 5 feet long.
Oh man!
So one guy ate 10 in one sitting, went really quick. Levac and I are standing next to each other. We're eating hot dogs. We're trying to get them down our stomachs.
Yeah.
I stopped at 9. I got to 9 and I stopped because the weather that day, it was blazing hot. It was hot. And I made the mistake of not drinking enough water.
Yeah.
So I had to go
hot
inside.
Dogs are salty, man.
And hot dogs are super salty. so that's and Levac only finished at 8. Levac finished with only 8, and he stopped. So I am the first and only hot dog eating champion at 104.5 The Team ESPN Radio.
Well, congratulations. And I will tell you that if we ever did do a no garbage required, whatever we wanted to call it.
No limit required.
Yeah. An eating contest. You would smoke me in hot dogs because I don't think I could put down that many. I would try, but I don't think I could. But the one, and I've asked this question, I'm revealing a little bit into my psyche here, but every new employee that we have at my day job, I ask them a question. Once I get to know them a little bit, I ask them, okay, if you had to win a competitive eating contest, what food are you picking? Doesn't have to be your favorite food, just has to be the food that you think you can win. And my pick has been the same for the probably 13 years I've been asking this question. And it's regular Cheerios. I would be unbeatable with regular Cheerios. No one's eating more regular Cheerios than me.
I was going to say popcorn.
Popcorn, I mean, I can put down a lot of, but regular Cheerios, just to give you, okay. When I was a younger lad.
When he was a young lad. When he was a young warthog.
My mom bought a family-sized box of Cheerios. And I ate that in a half an hour. And my mother had to tell me, she had to have a conversation with me and be like, hey, you can't eat those family-sized box of Cheerios too fast Those are like not cheap, like because mom worked very hard, but we didn't have like a ton of money back in the day, but
Right.
we had enough. We always had enough. But she was like, hey, stop doing that. So I was like, okay. For some reason, I'm just a bottomless pit when it comes to regular Cheerios. So no
Yeah.
one's taking me down if we're doing Cheerios, but almost any other food, I think I could be bested. Certain ones, like somebody chose ribs one time, and I'm like, you're not getting that many ribs down. It's not practical.
Yeah. Oh, I did forget to ask you. I meant to ask you in our note to get required segment. So we had the comparison between Niki Lauda and James Hunt, and we
Yeah.
revealed in the movie that James Hunt only won one Formula One title in his career. Spoiler alert: that was in 1976.
Yeah.
But Niki Lauda won a whole bunch of them. I forgot how many. I will find out now. He won 4 titles. He won 3 titles.
Okay.
75, 77, and 84. So he went for longevity. James Hunt was like 1, and 2 years later he retired.
Yeah.
So for yourself, would you rather have long-term sustained success, or if you won your first title, just be done and over with and just enjoy your life?
And leave on top? I think for me, it would depend. If it's something I enjoy doing, I would want the long sustained success. But if it was so I'm going to answer it in kind of a roundabout way. For most things, I think I would want the long sustained success because there's a part of me, everybody worries about legacy as they get older and things like that. I would want to be remembered.
Right.
If it was something like UFC or something where it's like, okay, I'm doing this. If I won the title in UFC, I'm retiring because I don't want to take the beating that those fighters have to put themselves through, not only with training but actually the actual fights or boxing or something like that. I would try to win a title and get out.
Right. I got it. I got you.
What's your answer to that question?
If I were to have a long career, like if I were to win a title, if I would have a long career and miss out every year. If I get 10 years into my career, I finally win a championship, I'm done after that. Yeah. Because I can say for forever and a day that I won a championship at something.
Yeah.
That's why I try to, in life, I try with food, at least with food or any other experience, I try to do it just once and say, okay, I did it.
Yeah. That's another completely valid point because that's part of the adventure, I guess. I would say if I were to put us side by side, you are probably the more adventurous person out of the two of us. You're probably like, oh, I'm going to go try this.
And you would be
right. Whereas I am a little bit more of a, I'm a cautious person. Got it.
So I'm James Hunt and you're Niki Lauda.
Yes, I'm Niki Lauda. I can tell what's wrong with your car just by sitting here.
Except I don't get runny with. I don't have relations with random chicks to get my strength up.
Well, you could always try something once, Ryan.
Sure.
A little sense of adventure.
I fights to the finish because I have lots of sex. I'm James Hunt, a racing car driver. Honk honk. All right, we're gonna move on.
Somebody's clipping that.
Yeah, this guy. So, our last segment of the night, Dustin's got some thoughts on the first 2 games of the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Final. I'm going to hit the head real quick. So you go ahead and wax poetic or angrily or rant or whatever and talk about your teams in their respective finals. Go right ahead.
I am trying to remain hopeful. My hope going into these playoffs, these respective playoffs, the NBA and the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, which I still submit, the NHL are the best playoffs in all of sports. I don't think there's much debate there. The Stanley Cup hits every year. Not to take anything away from, the NFL playoffs, I enjoy too. There's something special about the October baseball, late September baseball, and I enjoy when the NBA ramps up. But nothing could beat the NHL, in my humble opinion, when it comes to playoffs. But I am rattled. I am rattled here. I said at the beginning of the show that this was shades of 2006 for me, because if you need a review session, I like a very odd mix of teams, especially being the fact that I'm from New York and I grew up here. My only local team, quote unquote, local team that I like, because they're at least 3 hours away, the New York Yankees. They are my baseball team. My other teams are a very odd mix of teams. The Seattle Seahawks, as you all know, are my football team. The Edmonton Oilers are my hockey team, and the Dallas Mavericks are my basketball team. In 2006/2005, for that part of the NFL season for the Seahawks, Seahawks went to the Super Bowl against the Steelers. We all know what happened. They lost. The Dallas Mavericks went to the NBA Finals versus the Miami Heat and actually were leading 3-1 and lost. Big assist to Bennett Salvatore on that one. I'm still bitter about that. And then the Edmonton Oilers had a dream run as the 8th seed in the playoffs that year and lost in 7 games, I believe, against the Carolina Hurricanes. So all I was thinking as I went into this playoff series is I said, please, let one of them win. Don't let it be a repeat of 2006. Well, both of the teams are in an 0-2 hole. And I'll start with the Mavericks first. The Mavericks, they have come back. They have come back in some other series. They were down. But the difference in those earlier series in this playoffs is they had at least one victory when they started their comeback and when they fought back to eventually win. They were down against the Thunder. They were down against I believe they were down at one point against the Clippers. They've been down in the playoffs, but they ended up fighting their way back. But they're down 0-2, and Boston's defense to start this series, Boston's defense just seems to be a little too much for Dallas. They're slowing them down. Yeah. And Dallas's three-point shooting has been atrocious, which is part of the reasons. I mean, game 1 was an aberration. They got blown out game 1. Game 2, they were better. They were in it late, but their three-point shooting wasn't as good. We shift over. So I am very worried. I hope that they can win 2 in Dallas to make this a compelling series, but my hope is dwindling.
Well, I will say this: with Luka, he's taped up like he's entering a barbed wire match.
Yeah,
and I get it. I understand the athlete's mentality. You want to go out on your sword or your shield, excuse me.
Yeah,
you don't want to go down. You want to go down swinging, but he's put together with duct tape, silly putty, and whatever numbing agents that can come up with to make sure he could play in the games. And he had a triple double on. He didn't have a triple double on Sunday, but everyone else in the team was just absent.
And even Kyrie, who we lauded a bunch of compliments on prior to the start of the series. Kyrie has not been able when Luka needs a respite. Kyrie has not been able thus far to pick up the slack. Really, credit to where credit is due. Boston's defense has been outstanding, and they are an amazing team. Shift over to Edmonton. Their power play hasn't been where it is needed to be and hasn't been where it has been at points during this season and in this playoff run, and their penalty kill. 2 of the things that I said had to be on They had to be locked down in order to take down the Panthers, and they haven't done it so far. They just got outplayed flatly in both games, and I thought they would come out and respond better in game 2. They scored that early goal, and then that was it. And there's been costly turnovers. One of Edmonton's turnovers led immediately to a Panthers goal right after that, and I believe that goal put them up 2-1, if I remember correctly. And it just felt like that was going to be the game winner, and it was, for all intents and purposes, because Edmonton could not score again. This is just, and it hasn't been on Skinner. He's been okay, but the Oilers are getting outshot. They're playing a little sloppy, and I think they're playing tight hockey. I think they're not. I think they're trying to compensate for some of the mistakes that they made, especially in game 2. They're trying to compensate for the way they played in game 1 and some of the mistakes they made. And it showed. They just came out and they tried to be aggressive, but they were playing like tight. It's the only way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm very worried about both my teams. But to your point, sir, it is 7-game series, and maybe both teams can go home, lick their wounds. But I'm not trying to be greedy. I know it's unrealistic that both teams are going to win their respective championships, but I just want one. And if I had to pick, this is tough. I'm putting myself in a vice here. And I'll ask you, because I defer more to your hockey expertise than me, but with I said it on Saturday's show, if Luka and the Mavs don't get it done this year, I think this was their shot, because I think the West is too much. And Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets are going to be back next year, and the Thunder have a great young team. I mean, there's going to be – the West is a gauntlet to get through. But to your previous points – you have to wonder, if McDavid and the Oilers don't win it this year, is Connor McDavid done in Edmonton? Does he try to force his way out? And I want to get your thoughts on that, because I follow hockey, but not to the degree that you do. You have a little bit more knowledge than me.
I think the more pressing issue for Edmonton is keeping Draisaitl. Yeah,
that's true. He's been a great running mate for McDavid on that line, and he's
right.
That's tough too.
Yeah, I mean, don't despair. I mean, don't despair just yet, because there have been past instances where a team that falls down 0-2 in the series has come back to win the Stanley Cup. And it's the last time it happened was 2011 when the Boston Bruins went down 0-2, and that was a series that every home team won the first 6 games, and then Boston absolutely slapped the taste out of Vancouver's mouth in Game 7. Pittsburgh did it in 2009. They went 0-2 down to the Detroit Red Wings and won in 7.
Okay,
I remember that last 10-second flurry of that game when Marc-Andre Fleury made the save of his life with, I think, 5 seconds left in the game, and that sealed the series for the Penguins. So, don't despair. Don't despair for your Oilers. I think the Oilers have more of a chance to come back.
Yeah,
if they can figure out Bobrovsky, if they can figure out a way to get shots on goal, because they had only 19 shots on goal last night.
Yeah,
they outshot Florida in Game 1. So if they can find a way to score, I think the home ice advantage will help tilt things their way. So it's been, I'll just say, it's been number 4. 0-2, it's been done before. Come back from 0-2 has been done before. I just don't want the series to be a sweep.
Yeah,
because we've had that streak. Mentioned it on Saturday. That streak of 28 years running of no sweeps in the Stanley Cup final. Last one to do it was Red Wings in 1998. Let's keep that streak going. So I'll be rooting for your. I put a couple tacos down the Oilers winning in 6. So
yeah. Well, I will take all the positivity that I can get, but I like I said, I'm shaken. It shades of 2006 for me.
And if worse comes to worse, as I mentioned to you last week. I think it was last week before our Saturday show. Drake put a $500,000 bet on the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So if they wind up losing, it's his fault. Because the curse of Drake.
The curse of Drake. It's a real thing. I'm telling you. Oh, man.
God. Well, I'm hoping that the Mavericks can at least win one game.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping.
If they win two, it'll be great because
yes,
it shifts everything around and it gets me interested again.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least I will say this. At least, but poor. It could be one of two things. It could either be poor shooting or good defense that's going to win this. It's going to be the deciding factor in this series. And Boston's played pretty good defense so far, limiting the Mavericks to less than 100 points each game. But we shift back to Dallas, and that could be the X factor for the series getting a turnaround. We have the series turning around.
Yeah.
So hey, let's see what happens. And I'm hoping for your Mavericks, hopeful for your Oilers. Only because I have money riding on this series.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get Ryan. Come on, Connor. We know you're a big fan of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Leon, you too. Let's get Ryan some money.
That's right. Let's win me some money.
And also, Connor, you can change suits now because wearing the same suit, it didn't work for you. So change your suit.
Or at least get a dry clean.
Yeah.
Gross. All right, we're going to get out of here. Before we do that, we just want to remind you about our social media channels right down here below Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's at NoCredsREQ. Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ. Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ. YouTube.com/@NoCredsREQ. Also on Rumble. You can find us there. And if you wouldn't mind, just please do us a favor and like, comment, share, and subscribe to all of our social media channels down here below. On the podcast side, you can subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. Rate and review. A 5-star rating would be very, very helpful. A review would be even more helpful because that means this show gets out to the podcast sphere. And one more comment before we get out of here. It's your Uncle Ryan. It's your Uncle Al saying Ryan needs to match Drake's bet. I don't have that kind of stretch. That kind of scratch, Al. I'm sorry.
If he had that kind of scratch, we would have a house in the OBX that we could just go to anytime.
Yeah, we'd have a podcast studio and people to advertise and get more people. Anyway, yeah, we have a podcast. We won't be doing this remote. We'll have a podcast studio. We'll be live in studio every day. So,
oh yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We're proudly presented by the Belly Up Sports Media Network. For Dustin Henry, I'm Ryan McCarthy. No show on Saturday. I have an appointment in Suffolk I got to attend to, so we won't have a show We'll have a show this Saturday, but tune in next Tuesday, at 8:05 p.m. We'll continue our summer movie series, and we'll talk some more sports. So until then, we'll talk to you soon.
Good night, everybody.
Honk honk.